You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of What If Deku Meets Winxclub. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Job Imagine 236 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. We were now in the forest near Alfea, where the Winx were helping Izuku with his training, as they had to be prepared in case the enemy attacked again. Okay. For starters, how much of your quirk can you use? Asked Tecna. Between 10 and 15%. When I exceed more than that, my body suffers for it, reported Izuku. Alright. In that case, it would be best to start small, said Musa. Began Flora, thinking of a way to help Izuku. Let's try one thing. Close your eyes and concentrate on your power, start with the maximum amount you can and raise it a little bit more. Think of it as a chemistry experiment, if you add just the right amount, the formula will work. Layla commented. Izuku listened to them and closed his eyes to concentrate. Lightning flashed through his body the moment he activated his quirk, much to the surprise of the fairy group, as that was the first time they had seen his power. Following his advice, Izuku concentrated on his power. He started with his limit of 15%, then gradually added more and more of his power until he reached 16%, then he reached 17%. He tried to go higher, but the increase in power made his body tremble, which a certain nature fairy noticed. Stop there. That's enough, said Flora, getting the green-haired boy to stop. Good. Now, fire all that force, said Bloom. Are you sure? Asked Izuku. Relax, there's nothing but trees in front of you. I don't think you'll hurt anyone, said Musa. Reassuring himself upon hearing that, Izuku remained with the power from before and drew back his fist. Smash, shouted Izuku, throwing his fist forward. Although it didn't hit anything, the punch expelled a gust of wind so powerful that it destroyed several trees in its path, while leaving a mark of destruction on the ground. Needless to say, the girls were impressed by this. Incredible, said Stella in amazement. What a force, exclaimed Musa. And that was only about 20%. Who knows what would happen if he ever used his full power, said Tecna in horror at the image. While they were focusing on that, another was focusing on something different. Well done, Izuku, said Flora, patting the green-haired boy's shoulder. Thank you. It took me a while, but I know that if I train more, I can achieve more, said Izuku. I'm sure of it. I believe in you, said Flora. Izuku blushed a little at the nature fairy's comment. Fortunately, no one seemed to have noticed. Oh, how cute, said an unfamiliar voice. The seven looked up to see the wasp woman. If it weren't for certain circumstances, you'd make a good couple, said the wasp woman mockingly. Who are you? Asked Flora, ignoring the previous comment. Oh. Didn't those two louts tell you about me? I'm offended, said the wasp woman with mock hurt in her voice. Those two? Wait. You're with the two guys who attacked the academy, asked Musa, pointing at her. Bingo. Prize for the winner, said the wasp woman. Cut the games. What are you here for? Asked Bloom. Oh, straight to the point. I like it. Turns out those two have forgotten a book, so we came to get it ourselves, said the wasp woman. We? Asked Izuku. Hello, boy, said a voice that, while unfamiliar to the fairies, was very familiar to Izuku, and that made him nervous. Looking towards the trees, he saw Alvarez coming out from behind them. You, exclaimed Izuku, surprised to see him again. We meet again. I never would have imagined you would interfere in my affairs. I guess I should have taken into account where you would land when I kicked you out of the tunnel, said Alvarez. Are you with those guys? Asked Izuku. Wrong. I don't work with them. They work for me, said Alvarez. So, does that mean you're the one who wants to look for the mystical tree? Asked Layla. You're right. For a long time I have been searching for that tree, and thanks to that book, I will gain the power to rule over everything and everyone, said Alvarez. We won't allow it, shouted Bloom before the Winx transformed and Izuku activated his quirk, joining the group. Be free to try, I'll be able to have fun after all this time, said Alvarez. Gee, you're feeling pretty confident, said the wasp woman. You'd better give up. You're outnumbered, exclaimed Tekna. All she got from the wasp woman was a chuckle. What's so funny? Asked Stella. Oh, I'm sorry, my dear, but did you really think we'd show up before you without some trick? Asked the wasp woman without losing her smile. Just then, a loud buzzing sound was heard. Shortly afterwards, flying on either side, several monster wasps appeared. Now, what was that they said about the numerical advantage? Asked Alvarez before launching a magical beam towards them. Flaming armor, shouted Bloom, raising a shield that managed to protect them from the magic beam. Come on girls, shouted Bloom before the 7 of them launched themselves to fight the enemy group. Izuku used the power of his quirk to jump high into the air, and while he was up in the air, he launched a kick into the air, launching a wave of wind toward some wasps, knocking them down in the process. As Izuku landed, a wasp tried to attack him from behind, but Izuku noticed and rolled to the side before hitting him hard in the chest, sending him crashing into another wasp, knocking them both down. Dragon Heart, shouted Bloom, throwing a sphere of fire at a mutated wasp which fell to the ground charred. Universe of Light, shouted Stella, causing a powerful light to erupt, causing a pair of wasps to groan from the pain in their eyes, which she took advantage of. Solar Storm, shouted Stella, throwing magical beams of light at the 2 wasps, who fell limp to the ground. Stereo Crash, shouted Musa, launching sound waves, causing some of the wasps to cover their ears as they groaned in pain. It went on like this for a few seconds until the wasps fell unconscious to the ground. Super Prism, shouted Tekna, creating a dome to fend off the attack of 4 incoming wasps. When they retreated, she deactivated the dome. Techno Shock, shouted Tekna, launching a magical beam with which she shot down the wasps. Andress Hurricane, shouted Layla, launching a morphic sphere with which she knocked down a wasp. Several wasps surrounded Flora, but she didn't seem bothered by it. Autumn Wind, shouted Flora, launching a magical beam that hit all the wasps around her, who fell to the ground. Flora was about to go to help the others when she felt something coming towards her. She quickly backed away, managing to dodge a barrage of needles. You dodged it. That's a shame. Flora raised her head to look at the wasp woman. Mind if I have a little fun with you? Asked the wasp woman before launching a barrage of needles from her arms. Winter Rose, shouted Flora, causing a wall of roots to emerge from the ground, blocking the needles. Pretty flowers, but is that all you can do? Asked the wasp woman without losing her smile. I can do a lot more than this. Summer Thunder, shouted Flora, causing a bunch of roots to spring up from the ground and head towards the wasp woman with the intention of grabbing her. Unfortunately, the wasp woman proved agile and quick enough to dodge every root that tried to grab her. Too slow, my dear. You'll have to be quicker than that, said the wasp woman before lunging towards her with her fist recoiled. Spring Ring, shouted Flora, summoning a shield, as she knew what the enemy's attack might be. And that it was, as the wasp woman struck the shield with her fist. To the fairy's surprise, the force of the punch was so strong that it knocked her to the ground. It was fun while it lasted, but this ends now, the wasp woman said before swooping towards her, but before she got any closer to her, a gust of wind pushed her back. Shaking her head, she looked over to see Izuku standing in front of Flora protectively with his quirk activated. Get away from her, shouted Izuku. Izuku, exclaimed Flora in surprise at the green-haired boy's intervention. Oh, how cute. Looks like your knight in shining armor has come to save you. Though he seems to have forgotten his armor, said the wasp woman. Soon after, she was surrounded by the rest of the Winx, signaling that they had wiped out all the wasps. That's it. We've wiped out all your nasty bugs. You've lost, exclaimed Stella. However, they all heard a chuckle. Turning their heads, they saw that it was Alvarez who was chuckling. My dear, you are very wrong. We have not lost, said Alvarez. What do you mean? Asked Bloom. I would like to point out that you are like the protectors of Alfea, but right now, you are taking care of us quite a distance away from the place. Don't you think that's a bit suspicious? Asked Alvarez. Izuku paused for a moment to think about it, fully analyzing the situation. It was then that he remembered Alvarez mentioning that those two beings that attacked the school earlier worked for him, and now that he noticed, he hadn't seen them in all that time. Besides, Alvarez hadn't made a move. If they had really come to kill them, he would have cast a spell or something, but instead, he let the wasp woman and her lackeys take care of it. Which left only one possibility in all that, one he didn't like at all. This is just a distraction, revealed Izuku, causing the Winx to gasp. It was true what Izuku had said, for while they were fighting Alvarez and the wasp woman, in Alfea, several explosions were happening, courtesy of the lava rhino and the ice knight. Both lackeys were in the office of Headmistress Faragonda, who was lying unconscious on the floor, and the ice knight was holding the book in his free hand. Ugh! Why do I have to be here when the boss and that flying cockroach are fighting? Asked the lava rhino complainingly. Consider this your punishment for failing the previous mission, said the ice knight before focusing on the fallen headmistress. I congratulate you, Miss Faragonda. I dare say you know how to fight despite your age, but if you had agreed to give us the book, it wouldn't have had to come to this. Stop this nonsense. We've got what we want. Let's go, said the ice rhino before the two left the room. Back to the forest with the Winx, Izuku, Alvarez, and the wasp woman. Indeed. I can tell you're smarter than them, said Alvarez. You tricked us. You cheaters, shouted Musa. It's your own fault for letting yourselves fall for a simple trick like this, said the wasp woman. Well, I guess now that all is said and done, it's time to go dash, said Alvarez. We won't let you escape. Fire dragon, shouted Bloom, sending a fire dragon straight towards Alvarez, but a sweep of his staff caused a wave of magic to slam into the dragon, destroying both attacks in an explosion. As much as I would like to take care of you, I have more important things to take care of, Alvarez said as the wasp woman flew to his side. With the magic of his staff, he created another portal through which he and his lackey passed, the portal closing shortly after. DMN it. They've escaped again, said Layla. Forget about it. We need to get back to Alfea as soon as possible, said Tekna, pointing towards the direction the school was in. It was then that Izuku noticed something around his body and was surprised to discover that it was Flora, who was wrapping her arms around his body, and even more so as she rose into the air. Flora. What are you doing? Asked Izuku, very nervous about the situation he was in. Flying is the fastest way to get there first. You may be fast with your quirk, but it's better to be safe than sorry, said Flora. Izuku had to admit she was right. He had used too much of his quirk during the fight, and now he was very tired, so that method of travel would be better. Though he couldn't help but blush at the fact that a girl was grabbing him like that. Wasting no time, the Winx and a blushing Izuku quickly flew towards Alfea, hoping it wasn't too late. After their victory defeat, the Winx and Izuku quickly returned to Alfea after learning that the fight they had was just a distraction to attack the academy while they were busy with them. When they arrived, they were horrified to see part of the school destroyed. Fortunately, no students had been harmed, but the one they were most concerned about was Headmistress Faragonda, so, wasting no time, they rushed quickly to her office. When they arrived, they found the office in ruins, with some parts burnt and others frozen. Griselda was treating Headmistress Faragonda, who looked like she had just come out of a fight, which she did. Headmistress Faragonda, what happened? Asked Bloom, very concerned for the headmistress. It seems that while you were out, the two who attacked the academy earlier came back and entered the office. The headmistress tried to stop them, but they were too strong, said Griselda. And what's worse, they took the book, said Faragonda. We were sorry we couldn't do anything, but Alvarez suddenly appeared and we were confronted by another one of his henchmen. By the time we realized what he was planning, it was too late, said Bloom. Now that you have the book, it should be easy for you to find that tree, said Tecna. I'm afraid so, said Faragonda. Isn't there some way to stop them? Asked Musa. Wait. Don't you remember the book said that only the worthy could reach the tree? Asked Layla. That's true. I highly doubt those guys are worthy of reaching it, said Stella. Which means we have time to stop them, said Flora. But even so, we don't know exactly where they've gone, said Izuku. I think there's a solution to that, said Faragonda, drawing the attention of the others. Really? Which one? Asked Bloom. It's a possibility, but maybe, in some library book there might be something about the mystic tree. Like its location, for example, said Faragonda. It's worth a try, said Tecna. Okay, girls. Let's not waste time, said Bloom. Meanwhile, in Alvarez's lair, the villain was once again seated on his throne, with the wasp woman at his side. Both awaiting his visit. That visit came in the form of his two lackeys, who had returned from their mission. Well? Asked Alvarez directly. We did it, sir. Thanks to your strategy, we managed to obtain the book without much resistance, said the Ice Knight, handing the book to his leader. The only resistance we got was from that old headmistress, but she didn't prove to be as strong as they said. It was boring to defeat her, said the lava rhino. Let's say that was your punishment for your earlier failure, said the wasp woman. That's what I told him, commented the Ice Knight. Alvarez decided to ignore them and focus on the book he wanted so badly. He opened it and began to flip through its pages, looking for the information he needed, which he seemed to have found as a smile formed on his face. Well. How interesting. Alvarez said, drawing the attention of his lackeys. Something wrong, sir? Asked the Ice Knight. It seems we need one more thing to obtain the power of the mystic tree, said Alvarez. You want us to go get that thing? I'd be happy to smash a few things to get rid of my frustration, said the lava rhino, slamming his fist into his palm. No. This time it will be different, said Alvarez before handing the book to the Ice Knight. I want you to go to the location the book points to. The rest of you, come with me. Is this thing important enough for the three of us to go? Asked the wasp woman. Let's just say it's something I wasn't expecting, said Alvarez. Later, at the Alfea Academy, the Winx, along with Griselda and Headmistress Faragonda, were in the Academy library, going through every book in the place, looking for something that could lead them to the mystic tree before Alvarez and his lackeys got to it first. Nothing. There's nothing about the mystic tree in this book, said Tecna, closing a book she was poring over and setting it down on a pile of books she had already gone through earlier. Any clues, girls? Asked Bloom, looking away from her book to look at the rest. Nothing here, said Musa. Not this way either, said Layla. At this rate we're going to be hours, shouted Stella, complaining. I think there's a proverb that says, dress me slowly, I'm in a hurry. Said Headmistress Faragonda with a smile. What is that supposed to mean? Asked Stella. It means that the answer isn't going to come because you say so, said Griselda. Stella, with a groan of frustration, went back to the work of checking books, much to her annoyance. After Flora checked out another book, she looked around the library, only to notice something. Hey, where's Izuku? I thought he was with us, said Flora, noticing the green-haired boy's absence. He said he wanted to train a little bit more and went to the forest, said Headmistress Faragonda. Oh, I see, said Flora with a tone of concern, which the fire fairy noticed. If you're so worried, go with him, said Bloom, to the surprise of the nature fairy. Are you sure? Asked Flora. When has Bloom ever joked? Asked Musa. But what about the mystical tree? There's still a lot of research to be done. Flora commented. We'll take care of it, said Tekna. Yes. You go with the young man, said Stella with a wink. We'll take care of it. Layla said. A grateful smile formed on the nature fairy's face. Thanks girls, started Flora before leaving the place. I'll be back later. As the Winx smiled, a look of confusion formed on the face of the headmistress and her assistant. Can anyone tell me what that was all about? Asked Griselda. Nothing, said the rest of the Winx in unison. It's probably just young people's stuff, said Headmistress Faragonda with a shrug of her shoulders. Just as they had said, Izuku was in the forest. What was he doing there? He was punching and kicking a tree like it was a punching bag. The reason for this was that, even though he didn't show it at first, he was frustrated and disappointed with himself for not seeing Alvarez's trap or preventing them from taking the book. Yes, there was a chance of victory if they found something about the mystical tree in some book in the library, but even so, that feeling wouldn't go away. So, after looking through a few books, he decided to go outside to exercise a bit so he could be prepared in case he was confronted by Alvarez or any of his lackeys. After another punch to the tree, Izuku stood still, deep in thought. It. If only I'd seen this coming earlier. Began Izuku thinking in his mind. Izuku, a familiar voice startled him and he turned around to see Flora. Flora? What are you doing here? Asked Izuku. I noticed you were gone and came to see what you were doing, said Flora as she walked up to him. Oh, well, you see. I was, training a bit, said Izuku pointing his thumb at the crushed tree behind him. Even though he was smiling at her, Flora was able to see that there was something else behind that smile. Izuku, you know that if something is bothering you, you can tell me, said Flora. Izuku was hesitating whether to talk to her or not, but when he looked into her eyes, he saw in them an aura of pure trust and a lot of concern. She was like a mother or an older sister who wanted to take care of her family. Letting out a sigh, Izuku decided to talk to her. It's just. I feel a little guilty about earlier. If I had known what Alvarez was planning at the time, maybe I would have. Began Izuku before a hand on his shoulder stopped him. Stop right there. It's not your fault. Alvarez fooled all of us. And believe me when I tell you that anyone, including me and my friends, would feel the same way. Don't let something like that stop you from being who you really are. You're a lot stronger than you think you are, and I'm not just saying that because of your quirk, said Flora. Izuku couldn't help but smile at the nature fairy's words. Thank you, Flora. I feel better now, said Izuku. You're welcome, replied Flora. Now let's go back to the others. Oh, you're leaving already? Asked a voice that startled the two, who looked up to see the wasp woman flying away. The party's only just begun. You again, exclaimed Flora, surprised to see the wasp woman. Hello again. It seems things have improved between you since our last meeting, said the wasp woman. Why have you come? Asked Izuku. That, my dear, is none of your business, but don't worry, we'll be sure to entertain you sufficiently, said the wasp woman. At the mention of we, Izuku and Flora became a little nervous about who or what was coming with her. Heavy footsteps sounded from where they stood and Izuku was shocked to see the lava rhinoceros emerge from the trees. Well. We meet again, brat. This time, I'll make sure you pay for what you did to me, said the lava rhino before charging towards him with a battle cry. Suddenly, before he could get close enough, a bolt of magic beam struck him, knocking him back. The lava rhino shook his head from the pain caused by the attack and looked up to see Flora in her Bolivix form standing in front of Izuku. Don't forget about me, exclaimed Flora. That would be for me to say, said the wasp woman, launching a barrage of stingers at the nature fairy, who took flight to dodge them. Ha! Looks like your nanny is busy. What are you going to do now, boy? Asked the lava rhinoceros. A serious face formed on Izuku's face as he activated his quirk. I'll do whatever it takes to defeat you, said Izuku. We'll see about that, said the lava rhino before charging at him again. Since he knew the trick of his enemy's body, Izuku already had a plan of attack against someone like him. The first thing he did was to dodge the lava rhino's lunge and then moved a little away. With a horizontal kick, Izuku sent a wave of wind straight towards him, who managed to raise his arms in time to block the attack. When the attack hit, a curtain of smoke billowed out. By the time it dissipated, to Izuku's surprise, there didn't seem to be much damage to his arms, other than a few small cracks. Do you like it? The boss decided to increase my stamina after hearing about your mysterious strength, said the lava rhino. DMN. I wasn't counting on that, thought Izuku, remembering that he was in a world of magic and spells. Now that it's clear that I'm not the same as before, let's get this over with, said the lava rhino before rushing towards the green-haired boy with his fist drawn back. I'll have to increase the power a bit, thought Izuku, remembering his little training, increasing the power of his quirk a bit, but not enough to hurt him. With all his might, Izuku quickly lunged towards him, and the moment the two of them got close enough, the lava rhino threw his fist forward, but before it touched Izuku, the green-haired boy managed to duck in time and slide under his arm. Detroit Smash, shouted Izuku, throwing his fist towards the lava rhino's chest. Luckily, he stopped the fist just short of the chest so as not to take damage from his lava body. That made a powerful blast of wind, powerful enough to blow the lava rhino half a distance away from him. Ugh. Oh, come on. Where the hell do you get all that strength? Asked the lava rhino, angered off at being knocked down yet again. You'll have to find out for yourself, said Izuku. Fine by me, said the lava rhino before lunging at the green-haired boy again. While the two were having their fight on the ground, another fight was taking place in the air. The wasp woman launched another barrage of stingers towards Flora, who moved to the side to dodge it. Summer thunder, shouted Flora, launching a magical beam towards her, but she nimbly dodged it. That's a pity. You're still too slow, said the wasp woman before launching a cluster of stingers at her. Spring ring, shouted Flora, summoning a shield with which she defended herself, but that left her open for the wasp woman to quickly get behind her and kick her. Is that all you have? Asked the wasp woman. I have a few tricks up my sleeve, said Flora. The wasp woman was about to attack when she felt something on her legs. Looking down, she saw that roots had wrapped around her legs, preventing her from going any further. Before she could comment, the roots pulled her down and slammed her hard into the ground, forming a small crater. The wasp woman let out a groan of pain as she struggled to get up, but stopped when Flora landed in front of her with a hand outstretched towards her in which she was charging magic to cast another magic beam. You're finished, give up, said Flora. Oh, you are so wrong, my dear, said the wasp woman with a smile. Flora was confused by the enemy's words. She's right, said a familiar voice that sent shivers down Flora's spine, who turned her head to look at the person who had just spoken. Meanwhile, Izuku and the lava rhino continued their battle of strength. The lava rhino would try to hit Izuku with his fists or his body, but the green-haired boy was fast enough to dodge them all, and when he found the right moment, Izuku hit him with blasts and waves of wind, as it was the only way to fight him without touching him. Izuku had thrown another blast of wind at him with his fingers, but the rhino was able to dodge it in time. Izuku was about to attack again when a very familiar female scream caught his attention while worrying him greatly. Turning quickly, his eyes widened at the sight of Flora bound with ropes of dark magic courtesy of Alvarez. Alvarez, exclaimed Izuku. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself sooner, but I was just waiting for the right time to act, said Alvarez. What do you want from her? Asked Izuku, getting angry as well as worried. To my surprise, it turns out I need this girl to fulfill my purpose. Now, if you don't mind, I think it's time for us to leave, said Alvarez. What? Now? I had him where I wanted him, exclaimed the lava rhino angrily as he rejoined his boss. Sure he did, said the wasp woman sarcastically, getting up from the ground and standing with her boss and partner. Izuku, help, shouted Flora as she struggled to free herself, but her cries for help were silenced as a magical GG covered her mouth. Sorry for the mistreatment, but we prefer a silent journey, said the wasp woman. With his staff, Alvarez summoned a portal through which they began to pass. That scene brought back bad memories to Izuku, memories of when the villains attacked them, took his friend Katsuki and he wasn't able to stop it. No. No. Not again, shouted Izuku, running with all his might with the intention of catching up. Unfortunately, just as his fingers were mere inches from the portal, it closed, causing Izuku to fall forward and roll to a stop on the ground. When he came to a stop, the compression caught up with him, and he fell to his hands and knees as he gritted his teeth in frustration. DMN. DMN, shouted Izuku as tears fell from his face to the ground. Izuku, a familiar voice snapped Izuku out of his state to look off into the distance and see the rest of the Winx come running towards him. We heard a fight from the academy. What happened? Asked Tecna. And where's Flora? Asked Stella, noticing her friend's absence. At the question, Izuku returned his gaze to the ground as he clenched his fists. She's been taken away, began Izuku, causing the rest of the Winx to gasp in horror. They took her away and I couldn't do anything, said Izuku before pounding the ground in frustration. Izuku. Don't worry. We'll work it out, said Bloom, putting her hands on his shoulders in an attempt to calm him down. I'm sure you did what you could, said Layla. But what would they want from Flora? Asked Musa. I don't know, said Izuku, wiping tears from his face before standing up to show a straight face. But we'll save her. Now you're talking, said Stella. We'd better let the headmistress know. She may have found something about the mystical tree that can help us, said Bloom. Without hesitation, the six quickly ran back to Alfea in the hope that they had found something that could help them find Alvarez and Flora. On their way, Izuku couldn't help but be very worried about Flora, the person who was the kindest to him since he came to this world. The one who acted like a big sister to him. He wasn't going to let Alvarez do whatever he had planned to do with her. Whatever it took, he was going to save her. After Alvarez and his henchmen kidnapped Flora, Izuku and the rest of the Winx rushed back to Alfea in the hope that the headmistress had found something that could lead them to where the mystical tree was, because if they found it, they would find Alvarez and Flora. Headmistress Farragonda, shouted Bloom, entering the principal's office, where she and her assistant were standing. Girls, what happened? Asked Headmistress Farragonda. And where is Flora? Wasn't she with you? Asked Griselda, noticing the absence of the nature fairy. Izuku lowered his head in disappointment. Well. About that. Began Izuku, unable to find the right words to report what happened. He and Flora were ambushed by Alvarez and his troops. Unexpectedly, they captured Flora and have taken her to who knows where, said Bloom, helping the green-haired boy. That's horrible, but I think I have the solution to all our problems, said Headmistress Farragonda. You do? Asked Layla. Yes. After much searching, I found the journal of an ancient wizard who was able to find the mystical tree, said Farragonda. Really? That's great, exclaimed Musa. What does that book say? Asked Izuku. It seems that the sorcerer traveled to all sorts of places purely for knowledge and not for greed or power. It was one of the 2 keys necessary for him to find the mystical tree, said Farragonda. 2. What was the second? Asked Stella. That she was accompanied by a nature fairy. As far as I could read in the book they stole, the guardians of the mystical tree were nature fairies, said Farragonda. That's why they kidnapped Flora. They want to use her as a key to find the mystic tree, said Bloom. We can't let them do that, exclaimed Izuku at the mention of using Flora as an object. No. We won't, but we have to think clearly if we want to stop Alvarez and rescue Flora, said Farragonda. But with the location of the mystic tree in that journal, things will be easier, right? Asked Tecna. Yes, but the location is too far to reach with our own speed, and even if we get there, it might be too late, said Farragonda. Why don't we ask the boys from Red Fountain for help? Asked Stella. Good idea. I'm sure, if they hear about the situation, they'll be more than happy to help us, said Bloom. Red Fountain? What is that place? Asked Izuku in confusion. It's an academy where boys, known as the specialists, trained to face monsters and other threats, said Tekna. You could say it's like a hero academy, said Layla. Really? There's a hero academy in this world? Asked Izuku excitedly. Yes, there is. I assure you, the boys will like you, said Musa. Alright, girls. Let's get going, there's no time to waste, said Faragonda, receiving a nod from those present. While Izuku had a certain thought in his head. Don't worry, Flora. We'll save you, thought Izuku. Meanwhile, in some unknown part of Magix, Alvarez, his two henchmen and a bound and gagged Flora magically appeared in front of a stone wall at the edge of a large forest. The moment they appeared, the Ice Knight approached them and bowed to his creator. I am glad you are here, sir. I am sure you have obtained what you were looking for, said the Ice Knight looking at the nature fairy. If I may ask. What do we need her for, boss? Asked Lava Rhino. It turns out, according to the book, only those who are worthy can reveal the passage to the mystic tree, but there seems to be an exception if you are pure nature fairies, began Alvarez before turning his gaze to his prisoner. That's where our dear guest performs. Due to the magical GG, it was impossible to make out what Flora was saying. Oh, my apologies, said Alvarez before waving his cane a little, causing the GG to disappear. I'm not going to help you. I don't care what you do to me, I'm not going to let you get away with it, exclaimed Flora with a frown. Surely, but I wonder what your response would be if the one getting hurt is someone important to you, like that boy with the green hair. He'd be a good toy for me, said the wasp woman. Don't you dare hurt him, shouted Flora. Calm down. You don't need to do anything, said Alvarez. What? Asked Flora a little confused. Your presence alone is enough to convince the protective field of the tree, said Alvarez before launching magic beam from his staff at the stone wall. The effect of this was that a sort of magical ripple was emitted from the wall, passing all five present. It didn't seem to do anything, but it caused an aura of green to surround Flora for a few seconds before disappearing. Soon after, the ground shook along with the stone wall, like an earthquake, but then, a part of the wall split in two like an automatic sliding door. On the other side, a tunnel lit by fluorescent plants could be seen leading somewhere. Perfect. Let's move on. Alvarez said. What do we do with her, sir? Asked the Ice Knight pointing his spear at the nature fairy. We'll take her with us, perhaps there are more defenses on the other side. You can never be too cautious, said Alvarez casting a spell from his staff at Flora, causing a dark aura to surround her and make her float. With all said and done, Alvarez and his lackeys, with Flora floating at his side, moved into the tunnel with the intention of finding the tree that would grant him the power to dominate over all. Seeing Alfea, a normal school where girls learn magical powers and how to transform into fairies was amazing to Izuku, but it was nothing comparable to what he was seeing when he arrived at Red Fountain. It was a huge building with several trees around it, but the most amazing thing was that it was floating in the air. It was almost like a spaceship. Even the water from the waterfalls was falling from the top floor to the ground below the academy. Impressive, isn't it? Asked Bloom, startling the green-haired boy. Why yes, it is. In my world, these things would only be seen in science fiction, said Izuku. Well, now you're seeing it. Just because it's a world of magic, doesn't mean we haven't advanced technology, said Tekna. Come on, girls. There's no time to waste, said Layla calling them from a distance, where she was waiting for them with Faragonda and the rest of the Winx. When they arrived at the entrance of the academy, they found Sky, Brandon, Riven, Helia and Nabu, who were hanging out chatting until they noticed the girls' presence. Sky, shouted Bloom. Brandon, shouted Stella. Riven, shouted Musa. Nabu, shouted Layla. The four girls rushed to hug their respective boyfriends. Where have you been? The mission you were on was supposed to have ended days ago, said Layla. You didn't have to worry, said Bloom. Sorry, but we had some complications on the way back, said Nabu. We wouldn't have had them if Mr. GPS hadn't tried to cut through dragon territory, said Riven pointing a thumb at Sky. For the umpteenth time, I thought we could get through safely. How was I supposed to know they were awake, said Sky. Hey, who's the kid? Asked Brandon pointing at the green-haired boy. His name is izukumidoriya. He was transported to our world chasing a criminal from this world who was hiding out in his, explained Tekna. Really? You should be careful with those things next time, said Riven. I know, said Izuku rubbing the back of his head with a nervous smile. By the way, where's Flora? Is she sick or something? Asked Helia noticing his girlfriend's absence. It's a long story, but first, I have to talk to Saladin. We need one of their cruisers. The place we need to go is far away and sacred and we don't have much time, said Headmistress Farragonda. Well, there is one that should be available right now. Timmy is in the left wing working on it, said Sky. You go with them to get the ship. I'll go update Saladin on the situation, said Headmistress Farragonda before the group split up, with Izuku and the rest of the Winx going with the boys. As they made their way to the hangar to fetch the cruiser, the girls were explaining everything that had happened. From Izuku's arrival to Flora's kidnapping. So, Flora has been kidnapped by that wizard Alvarez? Asked Helia in shock. Yes, and with those monstrous lackeys at his side, it won't be that easy, said Stella. And you say he needs her to find the mystical tree, a tree that possesses a lot of magical power? Asked Nabu. That's right, said Layla. And the boy comes from a world where people get superpowers and being a hero is a trade? Asked Sky. Yes, that's right, said Bloom. I have to admit, it sounds impressive, said Brandon interested in the green-haired boy's world. If the kid had one of those quirks, why didn't he use it to stop Flora from being taken? Asked Riven accusingly. That made Izuku look at the ground depressed. Believe me, I tried. If you hadn't come looking for me, I might be here now. I'm sorry, Izuku said before he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned his head to see that it had been Helia. Don't blame yourself for that. You did what you could. Besides, they probably would have gone after her sooner or later. Now all we can do is concentrate on finding them before it's too late. Helia said. Those words were enough to make a determined face form on the green-haired boy's face, and he nodded in agreement. Finally, they arrived at the hangar, where Izuku gawked at the massive craft they were apparently going to use to fast travel to where Alvarez and his lackeys were. Unbelievable, said Izuku in awe. Do you like it? It's one of the standard cruisers of the Academy. We usually use it for travel around magics, reconnaissance or high-alert missions. We even use it for cruising when we're bored, said Sky. So, will this get us to where Alvarez is? Asked Izuku. Depends on Timmy's diagnosis, as the ship has suffered some damage since the attack by those dragons, said Brandon. Once again, thank Mr. GPS, said Riven, receiving a withering glare from Sky. Just then, down the extended ramp of the cruiser, the aforementioned boy emerged from the ship, wiping black gunk from his face with a rag. Hi, Timmy, said Tekna greeting her boyfriend. Oh, Tekna, when did you get here? Asked Timmy surprised to see his girlfriend. We just got here a little while ago. We were hoping to use one of your cruisers to look for some guys who kidnapped our friend, explained Tekna. How's it going, by the way? Asked Nabu. You're just in time. Fortunately, the damage to the ship wasn't too bad and I was able to repair all of it. There are still a few things that need adjustments, but otherwise, great, said Timmy with a smile on his face. You see, it hasn't all been so bad, said Sky giving Riven a cheeky grin. Now we can go rescue Flora, said Izuku happy that things went well. But first we have to warn Farragonda, we can't leave without her, said Bloom. That won't be necessary, said a familiar and wise voice. Everyone turned their heads to see Headmistress Farragonda arriving at the hangar. I've already spoken to Saladin and he's agreed to let us use the cruiser. Good. Let's not waste time. We have to go, Musa said before everyone boarded the ship. After the initial preparations, the cruiser lifted into the air and shot off into the skies. All right. We're in the air. Where are we supposed to find Alvarez and Flora? Asked Timmy. Don't worry, I'll lead the way, said Faragonda, stepping up beside Timmy. Meanwhile, Izuku stared out the window, watching the scenery as he was immersed in his thoughts. Hang in there, Flora. We're almost there, thought Izuku. Shortly after Alvarez, his lackeys and Flora entered the tunnel, they crossed a couple of rooms until, at last, they reached the end of the tunnel, revealing a kind of sanctuary, with grassy fields all around, some trees and even a river that ended in a waterfall. All lit by a skylight in the stone ceiling that let in sunlight. Of course, the field was split into several plots divided by a deep cliff, and the only way to cross them was with some ancient-looking wooden bridges. Well, isn't it a paradise? Asked the wasp woman. Too pretty for my taste, said the lava rhinoceros, brushing aside a pair of butterflies fluttering near him. Shall we go on, sir? Asked the ice knight. No. From here on, I'll go on alone with the fairy. You two have something to do in the meantime, said Alvarez. What is it? Asked the ice knight. It seems we have unwanted guests, said Alvarez, turning around to show his lackeys his crystal ball that was showing the cruiser that Izuku, the specialists, and the rest of the Winx were on approaching the entrance to the stone wall. Hey! They're those fairies and their brat, exclaimed the lava rhino. They've come to save me and stop your plans, exclaimed Flora. What a appealing thing friendship is. Too bad that's what's going to kill them, said the wasp woman. Don't worry, sir. We'll take care of them, you go accomplish your goal, said the ice knight. I plan to, said Alvarez. With a slight bow, the 3 footmen went back the way they came, intending to intercept the unwanted guests, while Alvarez continued on his way across one of the wooden bridges, with Flora following him as he floated through the dark magic. My friends won't let you get away with this, said Flora. Let them try if they want to. I'll be sure to make them see the difference in power between me and them, said Alvarez with an evil grin as the eye sockets of the skull on his staff glowed with a dark light. After a few more minutes of traveling, the cruiser finally reached the entrance to the grotto where the mystical tree was located. The ramp went down and Izuku, the rest of the Winx, the specialists, and Faragonda stood in front of the entrance to the stone wall. So that's where the mystic tree is, huh? Asked Tekna. Layla glanced around. I don't see Flora or Alvarez anywhere. That means they must have gone in a while ago, said Brandon. With Flora, said Izuku. Then we should hurry before it's too late, said Faragonda before the group entered the tunnel. They spent a couple of minutes going through the tunnel until they came to a room filled with huge and glowing crystals. Unbelievable, I've never seen so many crystals, said Timmy. If it wasn't for the fact that we're on a rescue mission, I'd take a couple of them. Stella commented. We mustn't waste time. Let's move on, said Riven, taking a couple of steps forward. It was then that Musa noticed something moving between the crystals, something she recognized immediately, especially when that something was about to do something. Riven, look out, shouted Musa, lunging at her boyfriend and knocking him to the ground, in time to dodge an ice beam. What was that? Asked Helia. All around the room, several ice dragons came out of their hiding places. Thank you, Musa, said Riven, standing up next to his girlfriend. I know those creatures. If they are here, that means... began Izuku, remembering those dragons. At that moment, the Ice Knight came out of hiding and showed himself to everyone. Wow! I seem to have failed, but it won't happen again, said the Ice Knight. You must be one of Alvarez's lackeys, said Sky. That's right, and I'm not going to let you pass from here. My lord would be upset if anyone interrupted him, said the Ice Knight. Immediately, the specialists drew their weapons, the rest of the Winx transformed into their Bolivix form, and the rest Izuku and Faragonda positioned themselves to fight. A pair of dragons rushed towards them, but were destroyed by a magical beam from Faragonda. You go on, I'll take care of him, said Faragonda, to the surprise of the rest. What? Asked the others in unison. We can't leave her alone. It's too dangerous, said Bloom. It will be even more so if Alvarez gets hold of the power of the mystic tree. We must prevent it at all costs. Besides, I'm old, but not obsolete, said Faragonda with a small smile. In that case, I'll stay to lend a hand, said Musa. I'll stay too, he wants to make them pay for trying to attack me from behind, said Riven. Me too, said Nabu. Are you sure, Nabu? Asked Layla worried about her boyfriend. Don't worry, I'll be fine, said Nabu with a thumbs up. You're deluded if you think I'll let you through, said the Ice Knight before firing an ice beam from his spear. Harmonic attack, shouted Musa, launching a magical beam that neutralized the enemy attack. March, quickly. Without being told again, the others took off running or flying towards the exit. I won't allow it, said the Ice Knight preparing to launch an attack, but suddenly, Nabu teleported in front of him. Hey, you shouldn't lose your concentration, said Nabu casually before trying to hit him with his staff, but the Ice Knight managed to block it with his spear before pushing him back to those who remained. I may have missed a few, but that won't happen to you, said the Ice Knight as those who remained prepared to fight. The rest of the group continued to run quickly through the tunnel. After some more running, they came to another room, where the walls were covered with roots. They stopped for a moment to catch their breath. Do you really think they'll be alright? Asked Izuku. Trust me. They're tougher than they look, said Brandon. Oh, that's nice. You worry about them, said a female voice familiar to half the group. Looking up, they all saw the wasp woman flying in the middle of the room. Though I think you should worry about yourselves first. That's her. She was there when Flora was taken away, exclaimed Izuku pointing at her. Oh, what a surprise. The knight has come to rescue his princess. Too bad he won't be able to make it, said the wasp woman, launching a barrage of stingers at him. Izuku quickly prepared to activate his quirk and dodge the attack, but a beam of magical beam neutralized it. Izuku turned to see that it was Stella who saved him. You're not going to touch a hair on his head. Not while we're here, said Stella. You go ahead. We'll take care of her, said Tekna. Are you sure? She's stronger than she looks, said Izuku. That's why they'll have help, said Brandon standing next to the two fairies with Timmy. Like Faragonda said, the important thing is to stop Alvarez from getting the power from that tree. Don't worry about us. We'll manage, said Timmy. All right, but be careful, said Bloom before flying off with the others. Suddenly, a group of monstrous wasps got in their way. Did you really think I wouldn't have a backup plan in a case like this? Asked the wasp woman. That won't stop us, shouted Izuku activating his quirk and putting pressure on his index finger. Delaware smash, shouted Izuku releasing his finger and sending out a blast of wind so powerful that it knocked down all the wasps and clearing the way. Let's go. Without question, he and the others left the room without looking back. Needless to say, Sky and Helia were impressed with the green-haired boy's power. Geez. When we were told that Izuku had amazing power, I wasn't expecting something like this, commented Sky. Me neither, and I must say, it's beyond amazing, said Helia before the five of them left the room. I should have expected that after what that lava brute told us, said the wasp woman before focusing on those who remained. I guess I'll have to play a game with you. Yes. To the game of squash the bug, said Stella getting ready to fight along with her boyfriend, her friend and her friend's boyfriend. Finally, after a bit more running around, the group of five reached another room, which looked more normal than the previous ones, as the whole room looked like the room of an ancient temple, with its smooth floor and walls and a few pillars at the edges. But that wasn't what was important at the moment. Just a little more. We must be close. Layla said. Yes. Near your end, said a deep voice, all too familiar to the green-haired boy. A couple of tremors occurred as a sign that someone heavy was approaching. Everyone looked to the exit to see the lava rhino entering the room. You, exclaimed Izuku with surprise and a bit of annoyance. You know. I'm glad you got past those two. Because then I can be the one to crush you, said the lava rhino slamming his fist into his palm. And what are we? Dry liver, asked Sky. Oh, don't worry. I'll take care of you. As soon as I crush that brat for all the times he's humiliated me, shouted the lava rhino before charging towards Izuku, completely ignoring the others. However, before he could get any closer to the green-haired boy, two magical beams struck him, causing him to halt his charge as he was pushed backwards. He looked up to see Bloom and Layla flying over Izuku. "You shouldn't have ignored us," Bloom said. "Hey! Don't get in the way. This is between me and the brat," shouted the lava rhino indignantly before ropes wrapped around him. "Ack! What?" exclaimed the lava rhino in confusion as he tried to free himself from the ropes, but someone was pulling on them with the intention of restricting his movements. That someone was Helia, who was using the ropes of his gloves to restrain him. "Izuku, go save Flora," shouted Helia, to the surprise of the green-haired boy. "What? Why me? I'm not leaving you with this guy," said Izuku. "Don't worry, we'll manage," said Layla. "If there's anyone who can rescue Flora, it's you," said Bloom. Izuku still had his doubts about leaving the others with the lava rhino and going alone to save Flora. "You can do it, Izuku. We trust you," said Bloom, placing a hand on his shoulder. That was enough to convince him. With a determined look and a nod, Izuku activated his quirk and at a very fast speed, left the room in the direction where Alvarez had gone. "Hey! Come back! I'm not done with you yet," exclaimed the lava rhino, furious that his prey had escaped. "Don't just stare at him," said Sky, running towards him with his sword raised. Taking advantage of the fact that he was distracted and restrained, Sky hit him so hard that, although it freed him from Helia's ropes, he managed to knock him back, although it seemed that it didn't hurt him much. "UBSTRDS. You'll pay for ruining him," said the lava rhino. "Be careful. Izuku told us that his body is literally made of rock and lava," said Bloom. "Which means it's dangerous to touch him," continued Layla. "Good to know," commented Helia, getting ready to fight along with the rest. With all his might, Izuku sprinted through the tunnel at full speed, intent on catching up with Alvarez and rescuing Flora. Although he was determined to do so, he couldn't help but be concerned for those who were left behind to deal with the evil sorcerer's minions, but this was no time to turn back. They had put their trust in him to take care of the matter and he had to reciprocate. Izuku stopped when he reached the paradise Alvarez and his lackeys found before they parted. But Izuku had no time to contemplate the scenery and continued his journey. Finally, after a long time waiting and after so much walking, Alvarez had managed to get the mystical tree before his eyes. It looked like a normal tree, but the glowing aura around it showed that it was more special than it appeared. "Ah, at last. After so long, I will finally gain the power to rule over all," Alvarez said. "Even if you sent your minions, my friends will get here and stop you," said Flora before the dark aura that made her float disappeared, dropping her to the ground. "That's likely, but by then it will be too late," Alvarez said, turning his gaze towards her. "But before then, I don't think I need your services anymore." Alvarez pointed his staff at her, which was carrying a magic beam. Flora's eyes widened in fear and she jerked, trying to free herself from her bonds. The wizard was about to cast his spell when "Alvarez!" shouted a young male voice, causing the wizard to call off his attack. Both he and the nature fairy turned at the entrance of the room to see Izuku panting slightly from the exertion. "Izuku!" exclaimed Flora, surprised to see the green-haired boy. Well. You're starting to get really annoying, boy," said Alvarez with a cocky grin. "Let her go right now," demanded Izuku. "I don't think you're in a position to demand anything," said Alvarez. "Izuku, get away. It's too dangerous," shouted Flora before a magic GG covered her mouth. "I'm sorry, but I don't like to be interrupted," said Alvarez. "Let her go," demanded Izuku. "Oh, don't worry. Once I get the power of the mystic tree, I'll release both of you from your lives," said Alvarez. "I won't let you. I'll stop you right here and now," shouted Izuku, activating his quirk. "What are you waiting for? Try if you can, said Alvarez provocatively. Seeing it as a signal, Izuku launched himself straight at Alvarez with his fist pulled back. Smash, shouted Izuku, slamming his fist into Alvarez, generating a small smokescreen. He thought he had managed to hurt him or something, but to his utter shock, Alvarez had managed to block his fist with the staff. Surprised? I had a feeling we were going to have another encounter, so before we got here, I cast a couple of spells on myself that boosted my defense, but I also boosted more stuff, said Alvarez before shoving Izuku so hard that he sent him flying into the wall. Flora let out a groan due to the GG in concern for the green-haired boy. Izuku slowly stood up from where he had landed. Anyway. Wouldn't hurt to have a little fun before we get to the finish line, right? Asked Alvarez, pointing his staff at Izuku, charging up to cast a magic beam. Stereo crash, shouted Musa, launching sound waves that shattered a pair of ice dragons as if they were glass, but, just like before, the dragons regenerated. They were about to launch an ice beam together, but magical ropes bound them completely and even wrapped around their snouts to prevent them from being ripped open. Musa looked aside to find that it had been the headmistress's doing. Thank you, headmistress, said Musa. It's always a pleasure to help my former students, said Faragonda. While they took care of the ice dragons, the two boys took care of the cause of it all. Nabu used his staff to block the Ice Knight's spear. The two were engaged in a duel of strength, until the Ice Knight noticed out of the corner of his eye Riven approaching with his sword raised, but the Ice Knight jumped back in time to dodge. Looks like I'm going to have to get serious, said the Ice Knight. That's funny. That's what I was going to say, said Riven. Then those will be your last words, said the Ice Knight before he created several icicles of ice around himself and, with a wave of his arm, flung them towards the two boys. The two specialists jumped aside to dodge the attack. I have an idea, but I need you to distract him, said Nabu. Count on it, said Riven, charging towards the Ice Knight with his sword at the ready. The Ice Knight began to hurl ice beams from his spear at the specialist charging towards him, but Riven was able to dodge all of the beams. As soon as Riven reached him, the two got into a weapons duel, with each trying to hit the other while blocking each other. Riven brought his sword down for a vertical slash, but the Ice Knight blocked it with his spear. You can't beat me on your own, said the Ice Knight. It's lucky I'm not, said Riven with a smile. The Ice Knight was confused by that until something hit him in the chest, knocking him back quite a bit. He looked up and saw Nabu suddenly appear at Riven's side. The Ice Knight let out a grunt as he realized he had been tricked. Game over, exclaimed the Ice Knight before slamming the tip of his spear into the ground, causing several ice spikes to erupt in their direction. Riven and Nabu managed to dodge out of the way in time before they were impaled. Your weapons are no match for me, said the Ice Knight. Suddenly, a boomerang flew towards him and struck his hand, causing him to drop his spear in surprise and pain. Before he could plan to retrieve it, a burst of energy quickly hit him, sending him flying a couple of meters, though he landed on his feet. The boomerang flew back into the hand of Riven, its owner. I think so, said Riven. Solar Storm, shouted Stella, launching a magical beam at the wasp woman, who easily dodged it and then launched a barrage of stingers at her. Super Prism, shouted Tekna, summoning a shield with which they protected themselves from the attack. However, the wasp woman didn't realize she was so close to the ground. Brandon took advantage of that to try to attack her with his sword, but she dodged his attacks and tripped him, but grabbed him like a dance partner. Wow! You've got some good moves, said the wasp woman seductively. Hey! Get away from my boyfriend, shouted Stella, lunging at her, but the wasp woman moved out of the way in time to dodge him, dropping Brandon. Oh, well. I guess I'll have to kill you first, said the wasp woman. The hell you will. Techno Shock, shouted Tekna, launching a magical beam, but once again, the wasp woman nimbly dodged the attack. Sorry, my dear, but you'll have to be quicker than that, said the wasp woman before she felt something coming from behind her. She dodged to the side, but unfortunately, an energy shot managed to graze her arm, causing her to scream in pain and clutch her damaged arm. She turned around to see Timmy pointing his gun at her. The wasp woman smiled before launching herself at him, knocking him to the ground with her on top of her. "Wow, you've got some nerve hurting a lady." "I think I'm liking you," said the wasp woman. "Sorry, you're not my type," said Timmy nervously as he tried to free himself from her grip. "Mega what?" shouted Tekna, launching a magical beam that forced the wasp woman to fly away. "Are you okay, Timmy?" "I am," said Timmy as he got up from the ground. "This is taking too long," said Brandon. "I agree with you on that." "I think it's time to end this," said the wasp woman, throwing multiple stingers all over the place. Brandon turned his sword into a double-bladed one and swung it around to act as a shield, though he had to dodge a few as well. Timmy moved back and forth to dodge the stingers while firing a few with his gun. Stella and Tekna were in the same situation, flying back and forth while using their shields and magic beams against the stingers. "Time to bring light to the matter." "Universe of light," shouted Stella, creating a glow so intense that the wasp woman groaned in pain as she covered her eyes. "Now, Tekna." "I'm coming." "Laser cage," shouted Tekna, launching a web of energy that pushed the wasp woman until she was pinned to the wall. "Ack. DMNU. Get me out of here," demanded the wasp woman, trying to free herself from the net. "Sorry, but you're staying in there until you learn not to steal each other's boyfriends," said Stella, landing on the ground and crossing her arms. "You could say the threat has been exterminated," said Timmy, laughing at his own pun. "Get it?" Brandon slapped his face at his friend's bad joke and Stella shook her head. "Anyway, let's get going." "Who knows what the other situation will be," said Tekna. But before they could take a step, cracking sounds were heard. The four looked up to see the wasp woman managing to free herself from the web and giving them a withering look. "Now this has gotten personal," said the wasp woman as the others prepared to fight again. Helia threw the ropes of his gauntlet to grab the arm of the lava rhino. Luckily the ropes were made of energy, otherwise they would have been burned by the enemy's skin. Helia pulled hard, intending to drag the lava rhino towards him, but it didn't even flinch. Instead, he tugged on his arm, causing Helia to be sent towards him, but he pulled away, causing him to crash into Sky, who was charging towards him with his sword at the ready. "Ha! You may not be strong, but at least your ineptitude amuses me," said the lava rhino. "See how you like this." "Dragon Heart," shouted Bloom, throwing a fireball at him, but unfortunately it had no effect. "Sorry. In case you didn't know, lava burns hotter than fire," said the lava rhino, leaping towards her with the intention of hitting her, but she moved out of the way, causing the lava rhino to hit the ground. "Morphix Wave," shouted Layla, throwing a beam of her magic at his back. That attack pushed him a little, but didn't seem to have much effect on him. The lava rhino turned around to give him an annoyed look. "Hey, big guy. Did you know that rhinos have very small brains?" The lava rhino let out a cry of rage before charging towards her, but just before he struck her with his horn, Layla moved out of the way, causing the lava rhino to drive his horn into the wall, getting stuck. As he tried to free himself, the two fairies and the two specialists met to discuss the situation. "No matter what we throw at it, that thing is tougher than we thought," said Sky. "You said Izuku managed to defeat it once. Do you know how he did it?" asked Helia. "He told us that he built up pressure in his fingers, thus releasing a blast of wind so powerful that it wounded him," said Bloom, recalling the explanation of that battle. "Then we need to think of a similar way to do that," said Layla. Just then, the lava rhino broke free of his predicament and turned around to give them a withering glare. "Enough of your talk. I'm going to crush you all," said the lava rhino before letting out a battle cry as he leapt towards them with his fists raised. "Scatter," shouted Bloom just before the four of them broke apart before the lava rhino slammed his fists into the ground, causing the entire room to shake, even the pillars, which Sky noticed. "Girls, I've got an idea." "Distract him," said Sky. "I don't know what you're planning, but okay," said Helia. Flora's boyfriend threw his ropes at the lava rhino and they wrapped around his arm, but instead of pulling, he started running around him, making the ropes wrap around him. When he had him completely wrapped around him, he pulled at himself with the intention of pulling it down, but to no avail. With a cry of effort, the rhino managed to free himself from the specialist's ropes and charged towards him with a recoiling fist. Morphix barrier, shouted Layla, stepping in front of Helia and generating a Morphix shield with which she managed to block the enemy attack, although the punch was so powerful that it knocked both her and the shield back a little, while she groaned from the effort of holding the shield. "You're starting to anger me off," said the lava rhino. "That's the intention." "Fire arrow," shouted Bloom, launching a magical beam near his feet, causing him to fall backwards to the ground. The lava rhino stood up and had anger and rage written in his eyes as he gritted his teeth. While the three of them distracted him, Sky was busy with his idea. He was near one of the pillars and was swinging his sword at it, like an axe chopping down a tree. When he made a cut big enough and deep enough, he knew it was time. "Hey, ugly guy," shouted Sky, drawing the lava rhino's attention. "I've defeated dragons smaller and fiercer than you." The lava rhino screamed in anger at the insult and charged full speed towards him. Moments before he reached him, Sky leapt to the side, causing the lava rhino to slam directly into the pillar. He jerked his head to shake off the pain caused, and suddenly, he heard cracking sounds. Looking at the pillar, he was surprised to see a very large gash in it, and from that gash, cracks appeared and ran all the way through it. Before he could think to do anything, the pillar collapsed on top of him, burying him in its rubble. "Good idea, Sky," said Bloom, landing next to his boyfriend. "If I'm being honest, I was afraid that would bring the whole room down," said Sky with a nervous hand on the back of his head. "Well, it was lucky that didn't happen," said Layla. However, the victory was short-lived when they heard something moving in the rubble. Soon after, the lava rhino emerged from among them as he screamed at the top of his lungs and gave them a death glare. "I've had enough, I'm going to smash your heads like blueberries," said the lava rhino as the two fairies and the two specialists prepared to fight again. While all these fights were going on, another one was happening in the Mystic Tree Room. Alvarez started throwing dark magic beams towards Izuku, but thanks to his quirk he was fast enough to dodge them all. "Come on, kid. Do something new. This running around gets a little tiring," Alvarez said with a cocky grin. Izuku decided to listen to him and, right after dodging another magic beam, put pressure on his fingers. "Delaware smash," shouted Izuku, releasing his fingers and sending a blast of wind at Alvarez, who used his staff to generate a shield to protect himself. Unfortunately, the blast of wind was so powerful that it destroyed the shield and pushed Alvarez a couple of meters. "I guess he was asking for it." "Time to get serious," said Alvarez before launching himself towards Izuku at high speed. Izuku jumped backwards to avoid being hit by Alvarez with his staff, which ended up hitting the ground, leaving a crater in the process. "Manchester smash," shouted Izuku, launching a horizontal kick towards him, but Alvarez was able to block it with his staff, even resisting the blast of wind that accompanied the attack, much to Izuku's surprise. "You should take better notice of your surroundings," said Alvarez. Izuku was confused as to what he said until he noticed a glimmer of light. Looking down, his eyes widened in horror as he saw the skull about to cast a magical beam. Izuku wasn't quick enough and ended up receiving it directly, being sent a couple of meters and falling to the ground with a grunt. Flora once again let out a whimper through the GG as a few tears spilled from her eyes at seeing her new friend get hurt like that. "Can you see that? You don't stand a chance against me," said Alvarez. "And no. I won't give up," said Izuku, getting up from the ground and lunging at Alvarez. Alvarez braced himself in case he decided to punch or kick him, but was confused when Izuku stopped a short distance away from him. Before he could figure out what he was doing, Izuku launched a kick into the air, sending a powerful wave of wind straight at Alvarez, sending him far backwards. Alvarez stood up to give the green-haired boy a withering glare. "I'm getting tired of you, brat," said Alvarez before sending several spheres of dark magic towards the green-haired boy. Izuku jumped up and down to dodge them all. Alvarez was sick of this repetitive performance, so with a flick of his staff, he deflected one of the spheres so that it hit the green-haired boy in the back, causing him to scream in pain and fall to his knees on the ground. Surrender at once. Alvarez said. I will never do that. I will stop you and save Flora, said Izuku. Alvarez conjured another magical orb and threw it straight at him, knocking him to the ground. Why are you so insistent? This isn't your world. I don't understand why you want to protect it, let alone that ridiculous fairy, said Alvarez. You are right. This is not my world. I'm just a foreigner. But still, what kind of hero would I be if I let hundreds of people suffer for someone like you? Asked Izuku as he slowly stood up. As for Flora, I do it because to me, she's the kindest, most sensitive and sweetest person I've met since I came to this world. Those words made Flora blush a little. Izuku had risen almost completely. That's why. Began Izuku before turning his gaze to the sorcerer. I won't let you hurt her anymore. Izuku looked up and shouted as the lightning from his body increased in intensity. That startled both the wizard and the nature fairy. Unbeknownst to them, he had increased the power of his quirk to 20%. But what? Began Alvarez before Izuku lunged towards him at a much faster speed than before and a few seconds later, appeared in front of him. Izuku screamed as he threw a punch at him. Alvarez was so surprised by his speed, he didn't have time to block or dodge it, taking the full blow in the face and being sent flying into the wall. I mustn't use it too long. I'm in so much pain that I think my bones could snap at any moment. Izuku thought about the sudden surge of power. Alvarez got up with a groan of effort. I don't know where you got that strength from, but I assure you it won't do any good against my power. Alvarez said before lunging towards him and swung his staff at him. Or so he thought, as, to his surprise, Izuku had grabbed the staff and managed to hold his ground. Before Alvarez could register what was happening, Izuku punched him in the stomach, sending him flying backwards again. As he got up, Izuku put pressure on his finger. Delaware smash, shouted Izuku releasing his finger, sending a blast of wind that hit Alvarez full on, sending him crashing into the wall, generating a small smoke screen. As it dissipated, Alvarez could be seen rising from the ground, using his staff for support and giving Izuku an angry look. I didn't want to use this, but you leave me no choice, said Alvarez raising his staff and slamming the skull part into the ground, breaking it in the process, much to the surprise and confusion of the green-haired boy and the nature fairy. Suddenly, strands of dark magic emerged from the remains of the skull and poured into Alvarez's mouth. By the time the last trace of those strands entered him, the wizard's body began to glow a dark hue as he groaned in pain for a few seconds before screaming. By the time he stopped, he could be seen that his eyes were a shade of red and the tattoos on his face emitted a slight dark glow. The wizard gave the green-haired boy a sinister grin. Let's see which is more powerful. My magic or your quirk, said Alvarez. Without any sign of a start, both combatants launched themselves at each other at blinding speed. Seconds later, they found themselves facing each other with their fists drawn back, and when they threw it forward, they hit each other, sending a wave of wind so strong that it shook the entire room. They stood like that for a few seconds until Izuku saw Alvarez raise his hand towards him. Knowing what he intended, Izuku jumped to the side in time to avoid a magic beam fired by Alvarez from hitting him. Before Izuku lunged at him again, Alvarez swiftly shot magic beams at him, but Izuku was just as quick to dodge the shots as he ran towards him. The moment the two were in close proximity, they began a sparring match, with Izuku using the power of his quirk and Alvarez his enhanced magic. The two seemed to be evenly matched, as they were able to dodge and block each other's attacks. After blocking another kick from the green-haired boy, Alvarez stepped back to get some distance, summoned several magical spheres and threw them at Izuku, causing a large explosion. Alvarez smiled arrogantly thinking he had managed to hit him, but that smile was wiped away when Izuku was nowhere to be seen. He wondered where he might be until he noticed something from above. He looked up to see Izuku, who had managed to escape the attack and was jumping from one wall to another. With a leap, Izuku reached the roof and from there he propelled himself straight towards the wizard as he prepared to kick. Manchester smash, shouted Izuku giving the wizard an axe kick directly to the head. The power of that attack was so great that it made a large crater in the floor and the entire room shook so hard that some rocks fell from the walls and ceiling. Flora had to roll to the side to dodge the attack. Izuku jumped back and waited to see the state of his opponent while breathing heavily, as using 20% of his power was taking its toll on him. He even let out a small groan from the intense pain. Soon after, Alvarez let out small groans as he stood up. No. It can't be. This can't end like this, cried Alvarez as the magical aura around him intensified. I won't let you ruin my plans. I will be the most powerful being in existence. And once I conquer this world, yours will be next. Alvarez clasped his hands together and shot a massive dark magical beams at him that struck the area where the green-haired boy stood, causing an explosion accompanied by a curtain of smoke. This time, he hoped he had finished off the brat who was interfering with his business. However, Izuku ran from the smoke screen towards the sorcerer at full speed. That won't happen. Why? Asked Izuku drawing back his fist as he approached the sorcerer. Because I'm here. Detroit Smash, shouted Izuku punching Alvarez in the stomach with all his might. Alvarez felt the air in his lungs being expelled before being sent like a bullet into the wall. The impact was so strong that it made the whole room shake. By the time the smoke caused by the impact cleared, Alvarez could be seen to be out cold. In the first room, the Ice Knight, who had retrieved his weapon, had defended himself from Riven and Nabu's attacks. He was about to attack when he noticed something on his body. Looking at his hand, he was surprised, as were the others, that it was melting, as was his entire body. From that alone, he knew what it meant. Well. At least I'll leave knowing that I served him faithfully to the end, said the Ice Knight before melting completely and turning into a puddle. Okay. What just happened? Asked Riven. In the second room, the wasp woman flew back and forth, dodging Timmy's shots and Stella and Tekna's magical attacks. She stretched out her arm with the intention of sending another barrage of stingers, but nothing was happening, much to her confusion. That confusion turned to panic when she saw her hand turn into a cluster of wasps. No. No. This can't be happening, exclaimed the panicked wasp woman as her body dissolved into multiple wasps. No. No. No, shouted the wasp woman before she dissolved completely and the wasps were left flying around the room, which shocked and confused those present. Does anyone have any bug spray? Asked Stella. In the third room, the lava rhino was preparing to charge back towards his opponents, but before doing so, he noticed something strange about his body. Looking down at himself, he was surprised, as were the others, that he was unraveling. He grunted in frustration as he understood what that meant. Fine. If I go down, you all go down with me, said the lava rhino before running towards them as he gave a battle cry. He leapt at them and just then, his body turned into a mass of lava and rock. Bloom and Layla quickly created a barrier with their magics to protect the four of them from the fiery rain. By the time said rain was over, the girls undid the shield to stare in confusion at the remains of the enemy they were facing. What was that? Asked Sky. Something must have happened for that to happen, said Layla. Maybe Izuku is in trouble. Let's go check it out, said Bloom before the four of them followed the path the green-haired boy and the wizard took. With Alvarez's defeat, the magical ropes and Gigi holding Flora prisoner disappeared. Worried, she turned her gaze to the green-haired boy, who had deactivated his quirk and was gasping for air. Izuku turned his head to look at Flora and gave her a toothy grin. I did it. I saved you, was the last thing Izuku said before he collapsed in surrender. Izuku, shouted Flora running towards him and grabbing him in her arms before he hit the ground. Flora calmed down a bit when she saw that he was only unconscious due to all the effort he put into handling his quirk. As she watched him, memories of their time together crossed her mind. When they both tended the private garden, when she helped him in his training and when he fought the final enemy, not to protect the mystical tree, but to save her. A big smile formed on her face and she made a mental note to thank her savior. Flora, shouted a group of familiar voices that caught her attention. Flora turned her head to see her friends, Faragonda and the specialists arriving at her side. "Thank goodness you're all right," said Bloom. "You had us all worried," said Stella. "What the hell happened here?" asked Timmy, noticing the mess all over the room. "And what happened to Alvarez?" asked Helia. Alvarez wanted to get the mystical tree for his plans, but Izuku showed up and the two of them clashed. Izuku won, but he had to exert too much of his power, explained Flora. "That's noticeable, considering the amount of damage in the room," said Musa. "I find it unbelievable that this boy was able to take on such a powerful sorcerer," said Riven. "I guess there's more to it than meets the eye," commented Tekna. "Well, the important thing is that Alvarez has been defeated and the mystic tree protected. Now we need to make sure that nothing like that happens again," said Headmistress Faragonda. "I couldn't agree more," said Layla. Once they were sure Alvarez was securely held, the entire group left, returning to the cruiser with him as their prisoner. Izuku felt very tired after having used 20% of the one for all for a long time. If he had lasted a little longer, or even if he had increased his power a grain more, he would have broken his arms definitely, as the doctor informed him. All he hoped was that Flora and the others were safe. Now, after what he felt was hours of sleep, Izuku awoke. After opening his eyes, he sat up while groaning slightly from the pain he felt all over his body. "Where am I?" wondered Izuku before looking around, realizing that he was in Althea's infirmary. Suddenly looking to his side, he was surprised to notice Flora sitting next to his bed as he slept. Flora stirred slightly as she woke up with a groan. The first thing she saw when she opened her eyes was the green-haired boy awake. "Flora? What are you?" began Izuku. "Izuku," exclaimed Flora, rushing to hug the green-haired boy, causing him to blush in embarrassment. "You've finally woken up. I was so worried about you," said Flora. "Why yes, thank you," said Izuku, embarrassed before the two broke away from the hug. "How long have I been asleep?" "Just a couple of hours." "You deserved it after what happened at the Mystic Tree Grotto," said Flora. "It's true. What happened to the Mystic Tree? What happened to Alvarez? Is everyone okay?" asked Izuku quickly. "Calm down. Calm down. Alvarez was taken to a magical prison, where he will remain for a long time. The entrance leading to the mystical tree was closed soon after we left. As for the others, they are in good condition," Flora explained. Izuku let out a sigh of relief that everything had ended well. Soon after, he remembered something recent. "By the way, how long have you been there?" asked Izuku. "Well, I wanted to make sure you had a good rest. After all, you went out of your way to save me," said Flora nervously. Izuku blushed a little as he remembered the words he said during his fight with Alvarez. Anyone else who had heard it would surely have misunderstood. "Why, you didn't have to do that," Izuku said. "Anyway, can you get up?" asked Flora, changing the subject. "Yes," said Izuku, getting up from the bed. "By the way, Headmistress Faragonda informed me that she found the spell to bring you back to your world," said Flora. "Really? That's great," exclaimed Izuku, excited to be back home. "I know. Come on. The others are probably wondering about you," said Flora. Soon after leaving the infirmary, Izuku was approached by the fairies and the specialists, all with questions about his condition and about the fight he had with Alvarez. Izuku was a little nervous, as he wasn't used to so much attention, but he managed to calmly answer each and every question. For the rest of the day, Izuku, knowing that he would return to his world that night, decided to spend time with everyone. Bloom and Stella shared stories of their past adventures with him, he listened to music with Musa, played video games with Tekna, enjoyed time with the Morphics of Layla and, most of all, spent time with Flora in her private garden. Later, he hung out with the specialists, who told him about some of the things they were learning at Red Fountain and the fights they were having, which impressed Izuku. There was even a small exhibition match between Izuku and Sky and Brandon. Despite the numerical advantage and experience, Izuku was able to beat the two specialists, much to the surprise of the spectators. After that, Izuku started to get along better with them. Night came and the girls wanted to show Izuku one last place to visit. Gardenia, a city on Earth where the Winx had their last mission. More specifically, the Fruity Music Bar, where, according to them, they had a special surprise for him. Izuku sat down at a table, where a waitress named Roxy handed him a fruit juice. I wonder what that surprise is. They didn't tell me what it was about, thought Izuku as to why the girls brought him there of all places. Suddenly, the lights in the venue dimmed, with most of the lighting focusing on the venue's stage, where, to Izuku's surprise, the Winx could be seen in rocking outfits and with instruments. Flora stepped up to the microphone. "Hello Gardenia," shouted Flora, causing the audience to shout in response. Tonight's song is dedicated to a very special member of the audience. "If you're here, then you know who you are," said Flora with a wink. Izuku couldn't help but feel embarrassed to discover the Winx's surprise, but decided to put it aside to concentrate on the song they were about to play. Following the classic start of 1, 2, 3, 4, Layla began to play the drums, with the others following soon after. They even began to sing a chorus. After a few seconds to get into the rhythm, Bloom began to sing. Izuku couldn't help but move to the music. He even felt like getting up and dancing. The song was really good. "I'm holding out for a hero, till the end of the night." After the song ended, Izuku and everyone else rose from their seats to give them a round of applause. Later, everyone gathered at Gardenia Park, where it was decided that Izuku would take the road back to his world. "I can never thank you enough for what you have done for me," said Izuku bowing in thanks. "Hey. No need," said Bloom. "We would have done the same for anyone," said Stella. "So. I guess this is it," said Izuku, a little depressed to say goodbye to his new friends. "Don't feel bad. Headmistress Faragonda already knows the spell to travel to your world," said Tekna. "Which means we will see each other again. Whether you go back to our world or we go to yours," said Musa. "That would be great. I'm sure my friends would be thrilled to meet you," said Izuku, excited about the idea. "Same for us," said Layla. "Anyway. Let's get to it," said Headmistress Faragonda before stretching her arm forward, causing a portal to appear that connected to Izuku's world. The green-haired boy turned around and took a couple of steps towards the portal, but then. "Izuku, wait," said Flora, causing the green-haired boy to stop a step away from the portal. Izuku said, turning his head. In time for Flora to give him a kiss on the cheek, making his face turn tomato red. "Consider it a thank you for what you did for me. And also a parting gift," Flora said. Izuku's reddened face disappeared and he gave her and the other fairies a smile before turning towards the portal and crossing it. Within seconds, the portal closed. As he crossed the tunnel that would take him back to his world, Izuku couldn't wait to tell the others about the experience he had just had and hoped that he could experience something similar again with his friends. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for more crossovers. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Job Imagine 236 on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.